See if we can get Gio in here. Wait, no, I invited him. There he is.
What's up, Blake? Can you see me?
What's up? Thank you for coming.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the LAFC Central Show live. We're with today's guest, Gio Garcia. He's at LA Soccer Hub. Before we start previewing the Cruz Azul match, why don't you tell everyone what you do, what you guys do, and explain a little bit about yourself for anyone who hasn't met you before.
Yeah, so obviously I cover both teams, both LAFC and LA Galaxy. Been covering them from since the start, since LAFC got into the league. Very passionate about soccer, very passionate about, obviously LA and how the sport has grown. And, and just events like tomorrow, you got LAFC playing in CONCACAF Champions League. They do have a powerful team that, could potentially make a deep run in this tournament. But at the same time, I just love that the sport is growing throughout the U.S. and throughout the city. And now we also see with Angel City FC come in. And I think it's just a great time to be covering soccer right now.
Definitely a great time to not only be covering soccer, but to be into the sport, especially in Los Angeles, just being named the sports city of the year. But first said, we're going to be previewing the LAFC versus Cruz Azul match, which is taking place tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. PT. You can catch the game on FF2 Tudun and audio on 98 AM La Mena Mena. So I wanted to start with the state of Cruz Azul. We've seen reports that their general manager, I believe, resigned, and they have a bunch of COVID cases. How do you think that's going to affect them going into tomorrow?
Yeah, it's actually the head coach. So the head coach ended up resigning. He went on Twitter and said that was in Spanish, and he said that he felt that his integrity, his honor, and the values of the team were questioned because Cruz Azul, they call it in Spanish like Cruz Azulada. Pretty much they were up 4-0 in the first leg, and then they lost 4-0 in the second leg, which is kind of unthinkable when you're already up 4-0 and you have that big of a lead. Whether they overlooked their opponent Pumas or not, Cruz Azul has a history of missing out on big games, and this is probably like the biggest, most embarrassing loss that they had on Liga MX history. And I feel bad for the fans, and it just, the team really feels like it's in shambles right now. You have a coach that decides to resign via Twitter a couple days before that they're supposed to travel to Orlando, and all those different things. You got to feel like you feel bad for the team and for those fans, but on the other side, you see that this is a great opportunity for LAFC. And on top of that, they had 12 confirmed cases. 3 of those were players. One of them was a starter, Jesus Corona. He's not playing. So all the players that got COVID are not in Orlando. They're not going to be with the team. But at the same time, you also have players that are hungry. I saw one of my friends who's a Cruz Azul fan sent me a thing that they wrote a message to the fans, that the players wrote a message to the fans. So you do have players that are really motivated and are going to want to prove themselves. This is going to be the first time to prove themselves after that embarrassing defeat. So you're going to have a lot of hungry players, but just as an organization itself, it's really in shambles, and it's kind of crazy what happened to them with the type of season they had this year.
Yeah, LAFC came in coming off the 3-0 winning over León. Going into the game was shut down that day. Then the game was moved to Orlando. LAFC were going to have the first home game. Then they were going to be traveling to Mexico City to play Cruz Azul. How do you think playing in Orlando will affect the clubs? Because LAFC, both teams lose that home field advantage, but then both teams lose the home field advantage. LAFC was in the MLS SPAC tournament in Orlando. Do you think it's going to have a bigger effect on Cruz Azul, LAFC, and how?
I think the biggest thing, I don't really think LAFC has experience of playing and in the bubble. Cruz Azul doesn't. But I think the biggest factor is they're without their head coach. Cruz Azul is still a solid team, but if you're out with your main head coach, that is just, it's unthinkable. Just put it this way. Say if LAFC lost in the semifinals and then Bob Bradley, somehow decided to resign, and then you still got another game going on. Just think about it. You gotta feel, you feel uneasy if you're Cruz Azul. But I do think the experience. I also do think that LAFC this is a time for them to prove themselves, especially with whatever happened what happened with them in the MLS Cup playoffs. Obviously, we know that they lost in the first round to Seattle Sounders. You didn't have Diego Rossi. You didn't have Jose Cifuentes. You didn't have Diego Palacios. You didn't have Brian Rodriguez. All those 4 players are going to be available. It was just confirmed today after Bob Bradley had mentioned that Chiqui Palacios was not going to be with the team. Now it's confirmed.
He just joined, right?
Yeah, now he's confirmed that he'll be available for tomorrow. And the reason why he wasn't going to be available was Chiqui Palacios' wife is currently pregnant. She has some contractions. So everything looks like you're going to have a fully maybe healthy. I don't know how healthy Brian Rodriguez is. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. But you have a full roster. Bob Bradley also mentioned that Danny Masovsky and Brian Rodriguez will be available. Now, how many minutes they play, that's another story. But I think the big thing is that they have Diego Rossi and Carlos Vela for this CCL match.
Yeah, you said Bob said you were at the press conferences earlier today, correct?
Yeah, yes, I was. So Bob talked about a lot about having those players, having Danny Masovsky and having Brian Rodriguez available for them.
Yeah, that's was that one of your main takeaways? Was there other notable things that maybe we should heard?
Yeah, I mean having those players, right? If you have a Danny Masovsky who he didn't play against Seattle Sounders, he didn't play against the Portland Timbers because of his injury. Now Bob Bradley has mentioned that he's been participating in training. You have Diego Rossi, you have Carlos Vela. Things are starting to break LAFC's way, especially with the news of Cruz Azul. Everything that happened to them. This is a great time for them to capitalize. Another thing that that really stood out for me from today's press call was Bob Bradley mentioning, he was asked about if he felt like they had the advantage. He said, I'm just going to paraphrase here, real advantages are earned on the field. You know what I'm saying? So that's the type of mindset you have to have going into face Cruz Azul, because nothing's going to be given, even though they're going through all these different things. Like I said, there's still going to be players that are going to be motivated. So you can't just think it's going to be easy because of what's happened to them. No, you got to be able to earn your opponent's respect, even though they don't have their head coach. And on top of that, you also want to make sure that you put them away early.
Yeah. So you said Danny Masovsky wasn't able to play in that game, but he has been a huge influence for LAFC this year as well. Plenty of the younger players. This is a completely different squad, completely different team that we saw when LAFC beat Leon earlier this year. When they started the season, of course, they went to break, then the MLS's back tournament, and the 3 phases of play. In the playoffs, as we mentioned, they lost to Seattle. How big of an effect do you think the young kids have had on this team throughout the season and will have tomorrow?
Let me just answer one question. They said about Farfan. Farfan is not available. Only the players that were on the 2020 roster for LAFC are available for CONCACAF. So Farfan is not available. A player like Danny Masovsky, who was recruited by John Thornton, I had him on my show, and he mentioned to me that John Thornton went out and recruited him specifically. And a lot of the players, Danny Masovsky also mentioned that Bob Bradley didn't even knew if you really had seen him much. And things for Danny Masovsky broke his way this year. You had Adama Diomande who got injured. You had Carlos Vela who didn't go to the MLS back tournament. You talk about a player that took advantage of his opportunity. He also has that mindset, and he also produced on the field. So a player like him, it's exciting to see. And we also know that LAFC picked up his option. And you're starting to see, if it wasn't for 2020, if it wasn't for the coronavirus, you might have not seen a Danny Masovsky. You might have not seen a Christian Torres, Eric Dueñas, getting those starts, getting that playing time. But that's what just happened this year, and you get to see some of the depth. You did see Christian Torres get to start. Maybe if Diego Rossi, you had Brian Rodriguez. We don't know if he might have started or might have not started. But you're seeing a lot of great things from this LAFC academy players that are coming up, but also the recruiting. Danny Masovsky came from a USL team. So you're starting to see a lot of things that are going to LAFC, because these are players that you can build to the future. They're not in the second, they're not towards the end of their career. They're in the start of their career, and it's an exciting time for LAFC, but you just got to bring all those pieces of the puzzle, especially tonight or tomorrow night.
Yeah, do you think LAFC has been able to bring in that young talent from the academy and even going into USL and getting a few players? Do you think they want to be at LAFC with what they've seen? Is LAFC something that they want to be able to be invited to? Do you think the club has put themselves in that position?
Yeah, when I talked to Danny Mazowski, I asked him, I was like, when did you think, you were on LAFC's radar? He said that John Thornton had invited him to a practice with the LAFC a year ago. It was November last year, and he unfortunately wasn't able to go because he had an injury with his USL team, excuse me, back in Reno.
Yeah.
And he just thought, okay, you know what? That's it. He knew. You think about it. Last year, LAFC had the record season. Record season. They won. The cup. They won. They had so many things going on. And for Danny Musovsky, it was like, yeah, this team wants me. Yeah, I definitely want to go, but I'm injured right now. So when a couple weeks passed and they decided to sign him, he was excited, but he also knew that that he had to put in work. So LAFC is a brand in the MLS, in the USL, and also you have a head coach like Bob Bradley. I think the biggest thing is seeing those academy players come up and be able to play with the first team, like a Christian Torres. Has been able to start and play for them. He did affect one game, against the Portland Timbers earlier this year. So LAFC for being in LA, but also having the type of season that they had last year, and the things that they're doing with Carlos Vela, Diego Rossi, it's a very attractive thing if you're in the USL and you're getting looked at by John Thornton.
Yeah, mentioning the academy, that was one of the first things that the club did to actually get people playing soccer. They created the LAFC Academy, and this is basically the first year that they've been able to produce players for the first team. LAFC signed 3 players, one of which Christian Torres and Eric Duenas as well. And they've been, who said Torres made his appearances. He's had effects on games. Duenas has made an appearance as well. Bringing in more academy kids, do you think this LAFC squad is just going to continue to get younger and younger?
It depends. I think you have to have a mixture of the youth but you also have to have the veterans to be able to groove them, right? I consider at this point Diego Rossi, he's only 22, 23 years old, but yeah, he's a veteran, right? You want to have those young veterans on the team, but you also want to have the superstar, Carlos Vela, to be able to, so Christian Torres can look up at that and be like, potentially, right? Carlos Vela, he's in his own league, but if you're working with a player of that talent and you get to see every day in training, you get to see how he laces his boots, you get to see the type of talent that he puts in every single day. It's great for Christian Torres. Now, I don't think Christian Torres is going to be able to, really impact and, really be as impactful like Diego Rossi. I would have to give him, I think we have to give him like another 2 years for him to potentially get to that point. But you need a mixture of both. You need a mixture of the young talent, but you also need that leadership, that veteran, Carlos Vela, Diego Rossi, because those players are not going to potentially, Diego Rossi, this may be his last couple games with LAFC. We don't know what's going to happen with his future, but you need to have a mixture of both. But at the same time, the thing I like about Christian Torres, Eric Duenas, they're from Southern California. Christian Torres is from Fontana. So you have someone that you can relate to, who grew up within Southern California and now plays for LAFC. And that's one of the things that LAFC was missing. And now they have Christian Torres, Eric Duenas, and all these academy kids coming up.
Yeah, LAFC has done a great job of not only bringing up the kids, but also making players that are purchasable and will make money in Europe. You said Diego Rossi, Brian Rodriguez. There have been a ton of rumors about that. None of them true yet, but more and more keep coming. Do you see them leaving the club within the next couple of years?
I mean, it could be the next couple months. I mean, the transfer window starts January 5th, I believe. Brian Rodriguez, we know his agent's been publicly out there trying to shop him out there. He's been very aggressive to try to get him out there. And I think that Brian Rodriguez, whether, if you're a fan of him or not, he does play for the Uruguay national team. He does get to start at times. He has not looked at his best with LAFC, or I would, even argue even with the Uruguayan national team. But he's being in that Uruguayan national team is like, I tell people, it's like a boys club. Once you're in there, you're in there. You got the national spotlight on you. So I do see Brian Rodriguez and Diego Rossi leaving in these next 2 transfer windows. If it's not in January, the next transfer window, whenever I think it's in the summer, they're going to be gone. Now, I think it just comes down to LAFC, right? Right now, transfer market, the last time I checked, they had Diego Rossi about 20 million, close to 20 million,
yeah,
which completely makes sense, right? But if you're LAFC, you say Saudi Arabia comes out, or, someone from England or, Spain, I think it's more important for LAFC if you have Diego Rossi or Brian Rodriguez go to Serie A, where we keep hearing about Brian Rodriguez in these Italian clubs, or Diego Rossi if he goes to our German club or whatever. He goes, goes to the Bundesliga or goes to the Premier League. I think you want to go on one of the top leagues, the European leagues, and that's going to prove their method of what LAFC has been able to build. And it just gets the influx of the Southern American players to come up through LAFC system and be a point to get to their European club. So I think it's within these first two transfer windows. I think Diego Rossi goes first. I know I had Alicia Rodriguez, and she was mentioning that she thinks Brian Rodriguez may go first. And her point was that she's not sure how aware the European clubs are of the MLS, how much they're doing their homework. And I really do feel like the European clubs, especially the German clubs, they know what they're doing. You see Alphonso Davies, he's a unicorn, right? He plays for Bayern Munich. Yeah. We've seen a lot of the American players or the MLS players go to Germany and get picked up and do really well. So I do see Diego Rossi going first because of the type of season he's had this year. He had the Golden Boot and, the MLS Pack tournament, Golden Boot for the 2020 MLS season. And mind you, he missed a couple games due to international duties. So though they're gonna be pretty, I'd say within these next two transfer windows, but I would be surprised if one of them two didn't leave in January.
Yeah, we've heard a lot about, especially Brian Rodriguez. Atlanta, the Italian club, I believe, has been very big in the rumors that getting that transfer really cement LAFC as like a big international club that can do those transfers. And of course, bringing the young one, they have the ability to do that. But let's shift back to the CONCACAF Champions League. We just saw Olympia. They beat Montreal, of course. Tigres and NYCFC is on right now. I'm going to go watch that after finish up this great interview. And then, of course, we have Atlanta playing America, and then LAFC versus Cruz Azul. This is a pretty stacked tournament. Say LAFC does advance, they play Atlanta versus America. How do you think LAFC stacks up versus those teams?
Well, I think you have, you're going to see, it's going to be no secret. I'd be shocked if Atlanta somehow beats Club America. That would be the biggest shocker.
Yeah, with the place they're in right now.
I think it's kind of safe to say that they're. I think the aggregate's 3-0. I think Club America's up on that. You got to assume that Club America is going to advance. They're going to advance on that one. So if LAFC do find a way to get past through Cruz Azul, it doesn't get any easier in the semifinals. You got Club America. And then say you get, for whatever reason, you get through Club America, two Mexico City teams. Cruz Azul is a Mexico City team, and Club America is a Mexico City team. So you got to go through Cruz Azul, Club America, and then to the final, which would be, I believe, Tigres on the other side. So you got three tough teams. And if they're able to get through Cruz Azul, you got to go against Piojo Herrera and Bob Bradley. That is just amazing. You have, two former national team coaches. You have Piojo Herrera, who coached the Mexican national team. You have Club America, one of the biggest, if not the biggest club in Mexico. Definitely the biggest club in Mexico City. And then you also have Bob Bradley, who's coached the U.S. men's national team, who's coaching Carlos Vela. Obviously one of the biggest Mexican national team players, playing for L.A., playing for Bob Bradley. I want to see that happen, but I think if you're LAFC, if you're Bob Bradley, you got to get through Cruz Azul first. Then you start thinking about America, and then it doesn't get any easier the more you keep going. But I think LAFC I think they're the strongest MLS club to make it to the final and to potentially do a lot of upsets, not just here in the first round, but in the second round. And then once you get past Cruz Azul, you just keep rolling. But I think the one thing that LAFC has struggled is in these knockout games. They struggled to get past. I think we've seen them get past the first round in the MLS Cup playoffs, but we've never seen them get to a final. And I think this is a great opportunity for them to get to a final and just kind of overlook the 2020 season that they had.
Yeah, this could be two takeaways. This could be a very historic moment for the MLS. I don't believe a team has won this current format of the CONCACAF Champions League. And then earlier you mentioned what Bob Bradley said in his press conference when asking about his predictions. He said, you can't underestimate Cruz Azul. I was going to ask you, what are your predictions for tomorrow's game?
I think LAFC is going to win this. I think it's going to be either a 2-1 or a 3-2 victory. Because LAFC still has the defensive struggles, in the back line. Even though you have Chiqui Palacios, that back line has not looked good. We could potentially predict, on the left back. Let's just say he's going to go with Chiqui Palacios. At center back, whether it's Tristan Blackman and Jesus Mourinho or Eddie Segura and Jesus Murillo, and then he plays Eddie Segura on the right back. That back line has had so many different, so especially and I think I tweeted this out in the right back position that played more than a handful of players. I think about 6 different players play on that right back line. So I think it's going to be a very tough game for LAFC, even though Cruz Azul, is out there, their head coach. But I think Cruz Azul does have the speed and the ability to score on LAFC, especially with the 4-3-3 type of offense that they play. They like to have their wings out and stuff. But I have LAFC winning this either 2-1 or 3-2. I think it's going to be a very close game, but LAFC pull out ahead.
Yeah, LAFC have always had this defensive struggle we've seen since the start. Had some goalkeeping issues with multiple keepers being in there for LAFC. And Tyler Miller's now at Minnesota. Pablo Cisniega and Kenneth Vermeer, who are currently fighting for the spot. We saw Vermeer start in the CONCACAF Champions League. Both Cisniega and Vermeer have started in games recently. Who do you think is going to be in net tomorrow?
I think at this point it's kind of clear. Pablo Cisniega is Bob Bradley's '1 goalkeeper. He started for them for the Seattle Sounders. Which we had seen Kenneth Vermeer start the last two games of the regular season because Pablo Cisniega was injured. I think you had almost about a month between the last regular season game and the start of the playoff against the Seattle Sounders. And Bob Bradley is a big believer in Pablo Cisniega. And, it's unfortunate for Kenneth Vermeer because they spent so much money trying to get him here. And he just didn't, he hasn't proved to be a #1 goalkeeper. And they paid all this money for him to be a backup. But at this point, I think it's Pablo Cisniega, unless he's injured, unless something crazy happens. I see Pablo Cisniega starting, and he's going to be the #1 goalkeeper for LAFC.
Yeah, we've seen both of them fight it out, and then of course Cisniega, as you mentioned, got the start in the playoffs. He had a good streak going, and then Vermeer took over for a couple games. Personally, my prediction: LAFC is rested. Cruz Azul right now is not really sure what's going on there. They had the COVID case that the head coach stepped down. I believe they're bringing up academy or U20 coaches or to come on to help the team out, which they're familiar with that, but it's not looking good for them. I do think LAFC gets the win, especially with Palacios coming in. I think he is very important for the back line right now. And I see a question right there. Murillo or Blackman? What do you think?
I go with Murillo. I mean, he's just more physical. But he has the bigger body. His passing is a little bit better than Blackman. But I think Blackman, if Blackman plays, he's playing at center back with Murillo. I don't think it's one or the other. I think Bob Bradley, what we've seen, he likes to play Murillo and Blackman together. And then if that's the case, then we know Eddie Segura is going to play a right back. But we don't know if Mohamed Molina would play on that right back. We didn't see him start against the Seattle Sounders. We did see him get subbed in that game. But I think we're going to see a very similar lineup. I think we'll see Chiqui Palacios if he's all good. We'll see Murillo and Blackman at center back, and then you'll see Eddie Segura at the right back. I mean, Eddie Segura looked good at right back. I think, I know someone had mentioned about Marco Farfan. You're going to start to see play. It's good that you start to see LAFC address some of those things like Marco Farfan. They picked him up. He's a low risk, high reward type of player. But I know kind of going on, but I would say Murillo over Blackman. But I think if Blackman plays, they're both playing at center back.
Do you think in the long run, since of course Farfan is not in for the Champions League, since the roster was released actually before LAFC had signed him, it had to have been a 2020 roster, do you think he'll get the starting position as of right now?
It's tough because as of right now, I'm not sure because I think LAFC are still going to pick up more players. They're still going to have to pick up right back. They have a player that I'm hearing, Paul Aguilar, who played for Club America. He's not in the CCL roster for Club America. He's out of contract, so he's opted out. Austin FC and LAFC are in the running to get Paul Aguilar. Paul Aguilar is 34 years old. I know some people had mentioned that, he may be too old, but Bradley Wright Phillips came to LAFC when he was 35 years old, and Bradley Wright Phillips played pretty well for LAFC, even being at 35. But I think Paulo Aguilar is a player that that can play in Bob Bradley's system. I think he's a player that's going to be able to play in Bob Bradley's system. I don't think Farfan is a start just yet because I think more pieces are going to be added to that puzzle, but he gives LAFC more depth, whether he plays at the left back or right back. I've already could play both. I mean, I think that left back position is going to be there with Chiqui Palacios. But another thing that people need to see is 2021 is going to be a crazy year. You got Olympics, you got World Cup qualifying, you got so many different events. You got U23s going on in 2021, so they're going to need fill the roster with a lot more players because any point in time in 2021. Say Chico Palacios goes to World Cup qualifiers. Say Eddie Segura, whatever. I know he hasn't been called up, but those players are going to be moving in and out. But you're going to need a player like Marco Farfan, whether he comes off the bench and eventually he's going to be able to start for you. But the good thing is he also has experience within the league, and the thing that MLS has, they do have solid defenders. And Marco Farfan, even though he didn't play that much with the Portland Timbers, though their head coach did not like to play younger guys, I think this is a good guy, a great talented guy that, like I said, low risk, high reward. He's only 22 years old.
Yeah, he's a youngster. To his bio, he's gone between, he was born in Oregon. He's gone between Timbers 2 and Timbers, being called up back and forth. It's going to be a great addition for LAFC. And of course, you mentioned 2020 is going to be a hectic year. Thank you so much for coming on, Gio. It was great having you.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great being on, man. We'll have to see what happens tomorrow with Cruz Azul and LAFC. It should be a fun one.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. Thank you.
All right. Peace. Take it easy, everybody.
So there you have it. LAFC versus Cruz Azul. That's tomorrow. You can watch the game on FS2 or tune and listen on 980 AM La Meta 7:30 p.m. PT kickoff. It's going to be a very fun one. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of LAFC Central Show live. We'll hope to have more episodes for you guys soon. This will be uploaded on all our social channels, as well as plenty of other content coming for tomorrow's game. See you guys next time.